busy day of sliding sports competition continues outside of Salt Lake City in Park City, Utah in the United States for stop number 2 of the FIBT World Cup. Bobsled and skeleton tour, the Viessmann race, women's skeleton now. Run 1 coming up just in a few moments. The men's skeleton already took part. We have bobsled later today on this 1,340-meter track built in time for the 2002 Olympic Games. Tim Singer along with Lincoln DeWitt, and Lincoln back on the microphone, the World Cup champion. Let's talk a little bit about what's really not too complex a factor, and that's steering a skeleton sled.
You know, it's one of those things, when you're doing it well, no one can see you doing it. It's done by bending the sled a little bit by pressing down on the corners of the sled with your shoulders and or your knees. Occasionally, if you need to steer quickly, you'll see the athlete steering with their toes, dragging a toe, just like you would on a sled in the backyard. That's the quickest way, most direct way to steer, but it's also the least efficient way to steer, and it's all about keeping as much speed going as you can down the track, so you want to steer as efficiently as possible.
The women's track record at the bottom is as old as the men's track record was. Our colleague last week, Michelle Kelly, set that mark back in February of 2001. The men's record fell earlier today, and now we will see in this cold, cold day whether the same will happen in this women's competition. The temperature has warmed up to a bit above zero. As we check out the World Cup standings, they are a reflection of last week's opening World Cup race in Calgary. Lizzie Yarnold, with the second fastest 2-heat tie, took the gold medal after Noel Pikus-Pace was disqualified. As a result, the American on her home track, who looked so impressive last week in Calgary, will be the final sled to come down here in run number 1. And we'll have that start list coming up in a second, as well as a look at our conditions as I tell you that you can become interactive with our coverage of run number 1 around the world, as we'll accept your tweets at Bobsleigh TV, B-O-B-S-K-E-L-E TV, at Bobsleigh TV, and always remember, tweet others as you would like to be tweeted. We'll also accept Gmail addresses, emails at our Gmail address, bobsleighTV@gmail.com. The school groups have made their way out to brave the cold conditions. Shelley Rudman, the Olympic silver medalist, will lead things up. It'll be interesting to see with these first few sleds. Keep an eye on the Russian, Nikitina. She looked great last week in Calgary, sizzling fast at the start. Michelle Steele from Austria with her two-handed start. She had a great showing with the bronze medal. And they will count them up to 24. And will the ice conditions be still okay for Noel Pikus-Pace, the American, to have a top 4 or 5 run, maybe even the lead? I don't know if I've ever seen someone in the final start position take over the lead, but that'll be fun to see. Have you ever, Lincoln?
Not that I can recall, but I'm not saying it hasn't been done. If it's going to happen, today would be a good shot at it.
This will be the day. So sit back, enjoy. A special welcome to our viewers in Great Britain sticking around on a Friday evening. You could be at the pub, but instead you're home watching World Cup skeleton, and in a nation that always excels in this sport, Great Britain. Here is 32-year-old Shelley Rudman from Sheffield.
Reigning world champion. Good solid start generally, and a good veteran driver. She should have good results here today.
Rudman had a 4th place finish at the World Cup opener last week in Calgary, but a bigger note, she had the fastest time in the second run. She moved up several spots.
So far, a good run up at the top of the track here. Now down through the flatter section of the track. Good position, good aerodynamics.
Took up the sport. 2002 was the flag bearer for Great Britain at the 2010 Winter Olympic Games in Vancouver. A little bit of ice flying here down at the bottom part of this track.
You can hear her head dragging around the high G's of turn 14 there. Pretty straight through the low point and up through the finish curve.
Hitting the finish line with a time of 50.35. It's tough to measure how that will compare against others. It is about 0.4 of a second or so off of the track record. But every day is different on a skeleton course, and really we'll get a pretty clear indication very soon, especially when her teammate comes down.
You can pretty much count on Shelley for being in the top 5 or 6 most races. A little bit of skidding there. You can see the sled not pointing straight. A little bit sideways there means that it's skidding as opposed to tracking straight, which is a little bit slower.
Now Lizzie Yarnold, the winner last week at the World Cup opener. We've been expecting big things for a while from Lizzie, and now it's all about consistency in this Olympic year. The yellow bib signifies the fact that she's on top of the standings. The junior world champion from 2012, 25 years old from Kent.
Not only did she win last week, but last year her best result of the season was here in Park City, so it's a track she knows and is pretty comfortable on.
That was a second place at the Park City World Cup behind Katie Humphries, the American.
If I recall, it was typical Park City results, pretty close, just a couple hundreds. Good top section of the track, clean sliding. She looks relaxed on the sled.
Bronze medalist last year at the 2012 World Championships.
A little bit of a hit there going into turn 12. See how she does at the bottom.
80.7 miles an hour. That really was among some of the faster men. So a good run at work here for Lizzie Yarnold in search of her second victory in 2 races. Huge lead. Andy Schmidt applauding his top athlete. And I say by top athlete because the Rudman-Bromley crowd is almost their own little federation amongst the British team. And Andy Schmidt works with the likes of Lizzie Yarnold and Donna Creighton and the others. So a taller athlete, and there really is no one prototype size in the sport of skeleton, is there?
Certainly not when it comes to height. When it comes to weight and size, some tracks favor the heavier sliders and some tracks favor the thinner, more aerodynamic sliders.
Canadian Cassie Horish, 10th place last week.
Here we go.
World Cup opener on her home track in Calgary, where she lives, originally from Brandon, Manitoba.
She also had a good competition here last year. She was 4th in the World Cup here last year, so she's also comfortable on this track. Pretty similar style track to the track in Calgary.
Canadians are now coached by Duff Gibson as we see the 5:25 start time. Gibson, the 2006 Olympic gold medalist. At age 39, he's the oldest ever individual Olympic gold medalist.
A little bit of a skid there going into 6. You can hear her head dragging through the turns there. Hold on to be ahead of Shelley Rudman. She's not going to catch Lizzie this run.
3 Canadians in the field here, and they all have a bit of a pressure to perform well because lurking just off of the World Cup circuit is Olympic medalist Melissa Hollingsworth, who did not make the World Cup team, at least at the outset of the season, but is fairly confident she'll find her spot there before too long. So how these Canadians do will certainly depend upon that a lot.
I believe Melissa's in Eagles, Austria, competing on the sort of the B circuit, the second level of competition circuit this week.
There are 3 circuits actually in skeleton, unlike bobsled. As we check out this form here at the start, there's the Intercontinental Circuit, your AAA if you will, and then they have the Europa and North American Cups, which is the next level down, 3-tiered. All right, all eyes to the top, Elena Nikitina. Great finish last week, a silver medal in her World Cup debut, and she broke the start record. So that's what we're watching now. Anne O'Shea's mark, a 4.94, set 3 years ago. Will it fall here? Very quick athlete.
I think she'll be sub 5 seconds. No, just over 5 seconds. She also, like the rest of the Russians, was here racing in the North American Cup races as a tune-up a couple of weeks ago. Pretty new slider. I think she only did about 4 or 5 World Cups last year.
Just 21 years old still from Moscow. And I believe she was even a little bit surprised with her top 2 finish last week.
A little bump there, yeah.
Big smile on her face when she finished that race. The sun peeking through a little bit on the track now, Lincoln. At this temperature, does that play any part?
At this temperature, not a whole lot. Most of the track is pretty well shaded, just the way that they situated the track here to keep the sun off of it, to keep the ice from melting.
What a difference 1 week makes, as Nikitina, the fourth fastest of the four who have gone. It's not even close.
Yeah, she's a ways back. I wouldn't be surprised to see her move up. Being so relatively new to the sport, she's going to be inconsistent. She may move up the second run. Here we see her down at the bottom of the track. A bump to the right. Not much of a skid, and she didn't hit twice. You got to be careful there. Sometimes one hit can lead to another, down a long straightaway like that.
Lucy Chafer from Australia. This is an Australian program. Earlier in the men's competition, we saw Terry Holland, the American from Massachusetts, really got this Australian women's program on the map about 10 years ago. Former countryman Eric Bernatis of the U.S. has taken over the Australian team. And Chafer starts at 5:19.
Chafer's consistently around that 10th spot on the World Cup, not usually a medal contender. Needs to be a little faster on the start and maybe have a little more driving experience.
Michelle Steele still to come. She was third place last week, her second ever World Cup medal. Melissa Hoare, Emma Lincoln-Smith, also some of that pioneering class of Australians who are not on the circuit right now. I believe Melissa Hoare is on the Intercontinental Cup.
3/10 back. Good solid run. It's going to put her mid-pack.
Fourth place, 4/10 back, a 10th out of third. Still ahead. We've got Anya Huber coming up next, Sarah Reed, who always does well in North America, and Robin Thompson, a Canadian, Michelle Steele. So we have a lot of contenders, not to mention the two Americans who are coming from way back in the pack here in the first heat. Now Sarah Reed, as Lizzie Yarnold has the early lead here. Sarah Reed, 26-year-old from Calgary, really small athlete. We were talking earlier about the sizes. Oh, this is Anya Huber, sorry about that. Not as small. Sarah Reed coming up next. Huber, the third place finisher last year here in Park City, finished 5th last week in Calgary and captured a world championship in 2008. Usually pretty good up at the start. A 5:15, the third fastest start time for Bavarian from Berchtesgaden, the home of Germany Federation of Skeleton and Bobsleigh.
Been on the circuit for at least a dozen or 10 years now, maybe a dozen years. Very, very good driver, a lot of experience.
Her town is a hotbed for sliding sports. The greatest luger of all time, Georg Hackel from Berchtesgaden, as is the current executive director of the FIBT, Heike Grossmann.
She had a little skid back there between 10 and 11.
She may go into the green here. Oh, it was close. It went from the red into the gray, but back into the red. So a good bottom part of the track for Yarnold, but not bad here for Huber, who should be in second place. 2300s back. Speaking of luge, that's a luge Olympic gold medalist coaching the German skeleton team now. Jens Müller captured gold in Calgary in 1988 to go along with bronze in Nagano in 98. Interesting. You have some crossover. Hans-Jörg Raffel coached skeleton for a while. I think Tim Nardiello did. These were all former lugers. So you may be on a different side, but you see the ice the same.
It's the same track and a lot of the same physics working on your body there. The luge sleds steer differently, so you take some slightly different lines down the track, but the basic principles are the same. So it's fairly easy for good drivers from any one of the three sports to learn the other sports.
Sarah Reed of Canada won the World Cup opener last year in Lake Placid, New York. 26 years old out of Calgary. Last week finished 6th at the race on her home track. And what I was alluding to earlier, one of the smaller athletes on the circuit. She and Michelle Steele, they find their gravity propulsion somehow.
Yeah, aerodynamics is so important. You know, just being a little bit bigger, a little bit wider when you're going 80 miles an hour can really slow you down.
Third fastest start time, but check that out. Now tied to the 100th of a second with Yarnold at the midway split. Will it turn green here? Look at the name S. Reed. Staying gray, now red again, 200s back.
Good form. See how she does at the low point. This will be the key spot here. Clean through low point, no skid, no hit.
Safely in second place, but she will not take over the lead. 1100s back. She had a 77-mile-an-hour speed at the bottom. That was 3 miles an hour slower than Lizzie Yarnold, which says a couple of things. She didn't have it quite going at the bottom, but she had it big time going at the top. To be 3 miles an hour slower, but only 1100s out. That's not bad.
She had a good start and then a very clean top part of the track, so she maximized that good start.
One Canadian now down in second place, another in fifth, and here's the third Canadian in the field of racers who all finished in the top 10 last week in Calgary. Robin Thompson, the newest to the squad.
All right, Robin, let's go.
As you see, she had an 8th in Calgary.
Go!
22-year-old off and running here. The 5:19, not bad.
A little bump going into turn 4. Clean into 5. Good entry to 6. She's having a pretty clean run at the top here.
Yeah, middle to the track. I mean, obviously it sounds cliche, but that's the key. 2/10 back. Now we'll see the speed. She was at 81 miles an hour at the middle part. It gets a little slower down here in the lower part, but if she's at 78, 79 miles an hour, she'll be in the top 2.
Slips back a little bit there.
77 miles an hour. So this should be third place, maybe fourth, back in 7th. Wow, really lost a lot down there at the bottom.
They were a little surprised too. Looked like one hit and then a little skid down at low point. And going sideways as you start to go uphill on this track is a good way to lose a bunch of time right at the very end.
Lizzie Yarnold of Great Britain leading the way, and wow, high off of that curve.
High off at the end of turn 11, which bumps her going into turn 12. That was the beginning of the trouble for her at the lower part of the track. Here we see her coming into the low point. Again, high at the end of the curve, makes you go across to the wall on the other side. A little bump and then a little skid. See her feet kicking out to the left there. I was trying to counteract the skid that she was going into.
Michelle Steele with the two-handed start, and Lincoln, somehow she makes it happen for her.
Yeah, and you know, she's consistent top 10, and she has good starts too, even with that two-handed technique. Old school.
Like the straight-on field goal kicker. And look at that, 200s faster, the second fastest start time. Only Nicotina was quicker.
And we may see one or two of the athletes come later that'll challenge that, but that will stand up as one of the fastest start times of the day with the two hands.
Steele broke into the World Cup at the age of 17, a babe in the woods or on the ice, and won a World Cup medal at the age of 19 in a scaled-down field in Nagano back in 2005, I believe.
She's already given away the advantage she had from that start.
And that's one case where, you know, perhaps that shorter frame, you don't glide as well. You need that quick time at the top. But she'll be in second place. It looks like third at worst. Yeah, third place, loses 600ths at that last part, but Michelle Steele is for real in this Olympic year.
Yeah, she's got a good build for the sport, and especially for this track, and with a fast push. Those are two really important characteristics for this Park City track. It's good aerodynamics and a good fast start.
Now, as we look at the rest of this field, we still have Marion Thies, not her best track, Katarina Hines, Katie Eulander, Noel Pikus-Pace. They all have a chance to bump Steele out of the top 3, but still, she'll do no worse than 6th or 7th after the first run.
Thies is great at a lot of tracks. This is not a track that's really a good one for her typically.
That's right.
I wouldn't see her bumping her out, but definitely look out for Eulander and Noel Pikus-Pace because it's their home track.
Janine Flock from Austria, 7th place last week. A good result from a nation that really hasn't put down a lot of great results in women's skeleton. Austria with a great tradition, luge, bobsled, and skeleton on the men's side, not so much on the women.
I was talking to her the other day. She said that they've started doing more recruiting of good, young, athletic women and men, trying to build their program, start with some younger kids and recruit some good athletes. She's only 24, but she's been sliding on the World Cup for 3 or 4 years now. Using her feet a lot, little skid there. She may have set her sled up a little too aggressively for how hard the ice is today, picking up the skids.
Flock's home track is in Eagles, Austria, where the tour moves to in late January, one of the last stops prior to the Olympic Games. Another short track like Park City with a big Kreisel curve. Not bad here in the straightaway.
Eagles is another one of those tracks that the start is extremely important.
9th place out of 9. There's a look at Martin Rettel, the Olympic silver medalist here in Park City, who coaches the team. I believe he also sets up the sleds.
I'm not sure on the equipment side, but he is their head coach. I'm sure he has a lot to say about it. He knows every part of the sport.
Zach Lund, one of the American coaches, coming out to help the Austrian there at the bottom.
She is, see that toe coming way out on the left side there, trying to keep herself from going too far to the right, and she actually overdid it and ended up a little bit too far to the left.
Lizzie Yarnold of Great Britain with a nice run in search of her 2nd victory in 2 races this season. The advantage over the Canadian and the Australian still ahead. 2 Germans and 2 Americans. So we continue our live coverage around the world. For our English-speaking audience, thanks so much for tuning in at race number 2. Next week we'll be in Lake Placid before the holidays and then head over to Europe. Stops in Winterberg, Germany, St. Moritz, Switzerland, Eagles, Austria, Koenigsee in the Bavarian region of Germany, then the Olympic Games. Tweet comes in from Donna Creighton, Great Britain women's skeleton slider, saying she heard her favorite song to help motivate her for today's World Cup race. She'll be going in the number 18 slot just about 15 minutes from now. So Donna Creighton of Great Britain trying to bounce back from a disappointing 18th place last week.
There in the background, I saw a couple of the track crew here pulling down a few of the shades in turn 11 to protect the ice from the sun that's starting to come up. Even though the ice isn't going to melt when the sun gets on it.
There's a little DeWitt somewhere in that crowd, I understand, right?
Somewhere down in there. At this point, she's showing signs of being too smart to do skeleton. So she's mostly been on the cheering side.
Great sports tradition, of course, for everyone in Park City with the ski slopes and the bobsled and luge tracks, the skeleton track, the ski jumps, speed skating ovals down in Salt Lake City. Later on, we'll see American Steve Holcomb, a bobsled pilot, maybe the best ever for the United States. Grew up right here in Park City where he was an alpine ski racer.
There aren't many spots that have more facilities and more opportunities for kids who want to get out and do winter sports, either recreationally or competitively. All the facilities from the Salt Lake Olympics have great kids programs at them.
So great school groups on hand here, chanting for the USA. Marina Gilardoni of Switzerland, beginning the 2nd seed here. American Katie Ulander on deck. Tim Singer along with Lincoln DeWitt, and Lincoln, in your main role when you're not making big bucks as a broadcaster, you are in charge of the development program here on the western side of the United States, the Park City track. How is the American development right now?
You know, we've got a bunch of young athletes coming up. There's still so many good veterans on our teams that it's hard just to even break into those lower levels of the competition circuit. But once you do, you can kind of climb the ladder on up and get to the World Cup races.
Really good upper part of the track here for Gilardoni, who's only a 100th and back of Yarnold at the latest split. We'll see what that translates to down here. 2200s back, but still looking at a potential top 7 if she can keep it together.
Great run by the former bobsledder.
To the finish, it will be top 10. It will be not top 10. I've been hit by surprise a lot down here at the bottom, which means that those taps on the straightaway are really costing some of these athletes on the final curve.
Yeah, when the sled gets sideways, it's kind of like making a hockey stop on your ice skates. It creates a lot of friction and slows you down.
New tweet coming in from @VivareB from Great Britain. Good luck to all of the British sliders. The boys and girls go kick it in skeleton. And we have a couple of more British still coming up. But here's the first of 2 Americans and the winner of last year's World Cup race here in Park City, Kaillie Humphries, the all-around athlete in search of her 3rd Olympic Games coming up. A 2-time World Cup champion and 2012 world champion, with a very unorthodox form, making her way down the ice.
Unorthodox off the block, but then pretty standard, straightforward, good running technique. Kailie's had some injuries at the beginning of this year. She's been a little off the pace. I know she's frustrated, but keeping in mind that the real goal is in February.
29 years old, out of Breckenridge, Colorado. Her start time was a 5:20, which is very disappointing. It is the slowest start time we've seen, 2nd slowest.
Yeah, much off her normal pace at the start time. Usually she has strong starts. Again, she's had some injury issues at the beginning of this year. Affected her training.
We've also heard possibly concussions, which she's going to get checked out on after this weekend. But yeah, no, this is a little bit disappointing from the athlete who, when she was winning World Cups, had the 2nd or 3rd fastest start times. But you just can't make up for that deficiency, can you, Lincoln?
No, you can't. And even after that, it was compounded a little bit. She had some more troubles coming down the track as well. Not a great run. I know she's going to be frustrated, but she needs to just keep in mind that it's early in the season and she's dealing with injury issues, and there's only so much you can do.
The winner of this race in Park City last year, is there a point where you say, maybe I'm not going to compete? I mean, her position's probably safe on the USA team.
You know, she did skip the team trials races at the beginning of the year because of the injuries, which was a good decision. She's trying to come out here and do the World Cup races. You know, it's a hard one to call. If she can do these races without making her injuries any worse,
then she's getting the experience.
Then just the practice and getting back on the track is a good thing.
Katharina Heinz of Germany, 13th place last week. Right after her will be her teammate Marianne Thies.
Germans always have a strong skeleton program, both the men's and the women's side. Great tradition in that country. A whole bunch of tracks there.
Heinz clearly the 3rd wheel on the current team. And the one really, if anyone, is in danger of not making the Olympic team. She may not.
3rd best on the German team, probably be 1st or 2nd on most other
Some
countries.
nations, yeah. As she's a 1/4 of a second back already in the early going at 52.2 miles per hour.
A little bit early coming into turn 11. Let's see how she comes out here. And nice adjustment there.
At good speed, among the best at 81.1 at the middle part. Slows down a little bit here. She does a little bit of correcting. It's that friction that's cost some time down here at the bottom, even more than the tapping, but holds it into the top 8, 4100ths out. So again, Lincoln, you need to educate me. I'm starting to feel like it's not so much the tapping down at the bottom as it is the veering of the sled, even in the straightaway.
Yeah, a little tap is not ideal. You know, straight is shorter distance, and the tap does give you a little bit of extra friction, but the big deal is the runners getting a little bit sideways and skidding. Right there, you see the runners pointing a little bit sideways as she's going up the straightaway. That's the big deal. She also gave up a lot of time at the start.
2-time world champion Marianne Thies of Germany, also from the Bavarian region, mild-mannered, soft-spoken, very quick on the sled, but conversely, one of the slowest starters. And when she won that world championship running away in Lake Placid, it was unbelievable. She had like the 21st fastest start each heat out of 23 and won the thing going away.
That she tends to excel on the longer, more technical tracks. Park City is a shorter, less technical track, more of a glider's track. It's a track where you want to do as little steering as possible. She excels on the tracks that are very challenging, where you have to steer hard.
Slowest start time of the 14 that have gone. She already confided in me before this race that she doesn't expect to finish in the top 5 on this track.
Yeah, I would expect the top 10, but the top 5 would be a great result for her on this track.
With the sun coming out, a natural track like St. Moritz, it always gets faster once the sun comes out. Is that not the case here in Park City? Or could that happen?
It could get a little faster the second run. The sun comes out, it gets just a little bit warm, builds up almost a little water layer on the top of the track. The ice could speed up.
Really not even good speed, which is the one thing you would expect from Marianne Thies down at the bottom. So a wince from Coach Mueller, as she has the 13th fastest time out of the 14 who have come down. Really disappointing start of the season for a 2-time world champion.
Well, you look, she's giving up 0.4 of a second at the start to the fastest starters. And that 0.4 of a second at the start multiplies its way down the track, especially the top of the track at some, by turn 6.
That's a great point.
That's a 6 or 7/10 of a second disadvantage.
Yeah, for some, 0.4 at the start could be a full second at the bottom. So for her to even keep it within 7/10 is at least a little bit of a small achievement. Maria Orlova from Russia. Again, a nation, as we've already touched on, has quick times here at the top of the track.
Good starts. 5:09. Anything with a 5:0 in it on this track for the women is going to be a good start. She also was here training in the North American Cup races a couple of weeks ago.
Annie O'Shea, the American, continues to hold the start record, not competing at the moment on the World Cup, but hoping to catch that 3rd spot for the Americans.
She had a little trouble with turn 7 there. Saw even a little bit of a wiggle in the turn, a little bit of a skid inside the turn there.
Some great sound.
Yeah, it's the sound of her helmet scraping on the ice. That kind of sounds like a turkey call. Squeak, squeak, squeak.
If you have a moose call, sometimes you see the moose and the elk here on the Park City track. Around the finish, 15th place, 7,800s back for the Russian. That's Willi Schneider, coach of the Russian team, former regular World Cup medalist for Germany. Battled Jimmy Shea for the, it was his teammate, Andy Bohm, battled Shea for the 99 World Championship. We're about midway through, a little more than halfway through this field.
Yep, there's the skid there in the middle of turn 7. It's more typical to see skids on the straightaways. In the turns, if you're skidding in the turns, you've really done something wrong, because the G-forces tend to press down on the sled and keep it tracking straight. So that was a real issue there in turn 7, right into the flattest part of the track.
Top of the track here at the Park City Bahn, the German name for track. Katarina Eustace of New Zealand, 16th place finisher last week at the opening World Cup race in Calgary, Canada.
Solid start time.
Lizzie Yarnold of Great Britain has the lead by better than 1/10 of a second over Sarah Reid of Canada, Michelle Steele of Australia in 3rd place.
Eustace doing a good job at the top of the track here, staying within shot of the top 5.
We've seen a lot of time slip away down here at the bottom. Her speed less than 80 miles an hour at the midpoint, so she's going to drop back quite a bit here in the lower half. Will she hit 78 miles an hour? 75.7. So Lincoln, it looks so promising up at the top part, but now in the end, she's 16 out of 16.
Yeah, good job at the top, but then a lot of problems down through the bottom of the track. The top of the track is much more subtle moves. The bottom of the track has a couple of spots where you need to drive a little harder and more precisely.
Still ahead today, we have the second heats of both men's and women's skeleton. Then later on, women's bobsled. The Canadians, Kaillie Humphries and Heather Moyes, dominated on their own track in Calgary. Then the first of the men's bobsled races, the two-man, where American Stephen Holcomb and Steve Langton took the opening race. But the women's skeleton continues with the Latvian, Leda Predulena. How does Latvia do in skeleton?
They do great on the men's side. It's a two-man show on the men's side. They don't seem to have a lot of other athletes. I would think the success that the Dukurs brothers have had would translate into more young athletes coming up, but haven't seen that so far.
And the Dukurs family, we should have some redirection there. The Dukurs family, we should say, because their father really instrumental in the whole program, the Latvian program. Track management, Ziguba, the equipment.
They develop their own equipment, their own sleds and runners.
2900s. Now that's a common split we've seen at that point in the track, and we've seen all of the time bleed away down here at the bottom. Look at that. From one split to another, she loses 2 tenths.
She's going to lose more time here. Bump and a rub and a little skid there.
This will be 14th, 15th place, 16th again. Just that finish curve has been just a time bleeder for everyone. It's an uphill section, isn't it?
It's uphill from the exit of 14 through the last curve is all uphill. So if you're going sideways there, you're slowing down rapidly.
Really good look at the angle.
So you're up on the top section of the track, a little bump off the right wall there. It starts to push her away from the turn, making it harder through the turn.
The third of the 3 British competitors is Donna Creighton, coming off of an 18th place finish last week in Calgary. Creighton, 28 years old, originally from Portsmouth. Her favorite track, she says, is Lake Placid, where she's had some top 5 results. And that's where the tour moves to next weekend. Also very quick at the start.
You would think with a quick start that she'd do better in Park City, but she hasn't quite found the right line here yet.
And a 5:09, 5th fastest start in the zeros, as you mentioned. You would think that would do well in Park City, but we have seen a lot of top half speed fall away in the bottom half.
Right there, you saw her bump early going into turn 3, which caused her to hit the wall before 4. So that good start, she's already thrown away the advantage she had at the start. Rough turn and ride into 7.
What was your biggest challenge on this track?
Aerodynamics. I'm on the larger side for skeleton athletes, so that was the challenge for me here. My starts were good, so that helped me here.
There was a period where your starts, teammate Kevin Ellis said among the best in the world, but a big problem there for Creighton.
Big hit on the wall there going uphill. Not surprised to see her in 17th after that.
Tied for 17th place, the slowest time, 51:06, of those who have gone down.
Gregor Staley was the other one with the
quick starts
and good finishes. Gregor was good at everything. Good starts, good driving.
Good attitude.
Yep, great guy.
This was quite a hit, right at the camera.
So you're going sideways and then a hard hit into the wall and then skidding the other direction up the rest of the way through the turn.
We really haven't talked much about the bumps and bruises and physical abuse, and we'll do that in a moment as first of 2 consecutive Japanese competitors make their way down the track. Takako Omakai finished 19th last week, and bobsleds, at least you have that sled around you. Skeleton sled, your shoulder is vulnerable, your hips are vulnerable, your head skims on the ice. Amazing.
Yeah, a lot of hits in the shoulders, and sometimes even your feet will kind of kick over. You hit a wall hard, and you'll see people get bumps and bruises and cuts on their ankles even. The smaller athletes, a lot of the women, are a little bit narrower than their sled. There's handles on the side that are actually there to protect you from the walls. A lot of the men are wider than the sled, so it's their shoulders that take the most abuse.
Omakai with the 16th fastest start, and based on the way we've been seeing the down times here, that is going to spell trouble. Only really Sarah Reed was able to find some huge speed down at the bottom. Yarnold as well. Michelle Steele, and no surprise there in the top 3. Not bad through the straightaway. But slow speed, 74.1 uphill to the finish, 19th fastest.
No big errors, but just a lot of little errors all the way down.
So the real question, Lincoln, as we look at these recent sleds falling back, we still have high hopes for the American Noel Pikus-Pace on her home track, but is this trend starting to make you question that a little bit?
No, I think the ice conditions are holding pretty steady. So I think the start position isn't going to hurt Noel too much. There's also a Russian coming up here, Nikandrova, who has some good starts, so we could see something interesting from her as well.
Nozomi Komuro, the veteran of the two Russians, that are Japanese sliders rather, that are still active. Komuro with 20th place in Japan last week, coached by Kazuhiro Koshi.
One of the all-time great sliders on the men's side of the race. Also just a super nice guy.
Ninth fastest start time, not bad at 5.14.
There a good start for Nozomi.
Three components, of course, Lincoln. There's the start, there's the drive, and there's the equipment setup. And that's not unlike cross-country skiing, where you have to set those runners up to the conditions, sometimes changing conditions at race day.
Yep, picking the right runners to start with. Different runners will give you more grip. You want to have enough grip so that you don't skid like that, but not so much grip that you're sort of slowing yourself all the way down the track. So picking the right runners and then setting them up right for the race day conditions. You'll see the athletes in training changing runners between heats just to test them out and see how they're behaving on different tracks.
13th place time across the finish at 50.70. May not seem good, but that has broken a little bit of a trend we've seen over the last 4 or 5 sleds of competitors in dead last. She puts her teammate Omakai in 20th place out of 20 so far.
Here we see her coming down a little. See the runners getting sideways there, losing a little bit of time. She does a good job of only making one hit, one skid and one hit, rather than one going into a fishtailing into skid the other direction.
Joska Leconte, 21st place last week in Calgary from the Netherlands. Netherlands has not usually had a lot of depth, but Joska's been around for a while. Peter van Vies for many, many years competing in the men's program for the Netherlands. Peter's probably watching us today. Say hi to him, Lincoln.
Hi, Peter. I remember Peter from when I was sliding. Netherlands seems to always have some decent athletes on the bobsled side. Haven't had as much luck getting more athletes into skeleton.
Just moments away from the top of the hour, where we'll be joined by some live television nations as Joska Leconte makes her way down 79.5 miles an hour at the midway split.
Three-quarters of a second back there. She'll probably be about almost a second back at the finish.
20th place out of 20. She bumps Omakai of Japan out of the top 20, and she sits on the bubble. Very, very unlikely to make a second run, because 19th place is probably the real bubble, with Noel Pikus-Pace still to come.
And Olga Nikandrova coming up next is also likely to make the top 20, maybe even get close to the top 10.
So 3 more remaining here. Final 3 sleds in the first heat of Women's World Cup Skeleton from Park City, Utah. Great Britain's Lizzie Yarnold leading the way ahead of Canada's Sarah Reid. And a warm welcome to our viewers across Canada tuning in. The second heat coming up in just a few minutes. First, we have the final 3 sleds here. This is Olga Nikandrova. Pleased to be joined by Lincoln DeWitt, former World Cup champion, on the microphone. And Lincoln, what's been the trend so far on this very cold day?
The trend has been you need a fast start, and you need to be really careful on the hard ice because it's so cold. The ice is very hard, which means it's more prone to skidding. And skidding or going sideways a little bit will slow you down very quickly.
The men's competition took place earlier this morning. No big surprise. Martin's Dukurs of Latvia leading Russia's Alexander Trechikov, but the Canadians have fared well in that race as well, with 3 in the top 10. Lizzie Yarnold leading the way here, and a 16th place finish for Nikandrova for the Russian program with 2 sleds remaining. Only the top 20 compete in the second run. The story within the story for those who have been following the early going in this World Cup season is last week in Calgary, the race won by Lizzie Yarnold of Great Britain. But American Noel Pikus-Pace had the fastest 2 heat time. She was disqualified due to a material equipment violation. That's her big head over there on the right. She will be coming up in just about 2 minutes. But before her, here comes Romania's Maria Marinello Mazzillo. That just rolls off the tongue. Did I do okay with that Romanian name?
Glad you got to do it. Good alliteration with all those M's in her name.
Nice form at the start. The fastest start time we've seen today was a 5:02 by the Russian Nikitina. This is a 5:22.
A little bump going into 3. Could give her trouble going to 4. It did. Up there. Oh, there's a little skid going into 6. Hear her head dragging through the high G turns there.
6,800s back at 78 miles an hour. Sitting on the bubble right now in a tie for 19th place. 2 athletes, 9,800s off the pace, and this athlete will not be a threat to them.
Nope. You have to use her feet a lot to steer, also letting her feet drag a little low, slowing herself down as she's going down the track.
Mazzillo with the 23rd fastest time of 23, which can also be stated as the first slowest time of those who have gone down, of 52.22. Earlier today, the track record was broken in the men's competition by Martin's Dukurs. It was a 12-year-old track record. We haven't seen it fall so far for the women here, but one of the race favorites is coming up in just a moment. The crowd from nearby Orem, Utah has traveled to Park City to view their favorite athlete, 2007 world champion Noel Pikus-Pace. It was an emotional turmoil last week for Noel, having that victory taken away from her, and this is going to be a test mentally as much as anything, Lincoln.
Noel was really disappointed with the disqualification and upset about it. She just needs to put that behind her, relax, and slide like she's been sliding the last 2 years. She came back out of retirement last year and has just been dominating. 13th
fastest start, but you know, Lincoln, her strong suit on her home track and any track happens at the midway point.
Yeah, she decent starts, but she's great form, and she's just so relaxed on the sled. A little bit of a toe steer there.
She has already reversed the trend. This will be very interesting. 800s back in the last split. Where is it here? Even.
Caught up.
Magic on the way down the track.
Almost a little skid there, but she kept it from breaking out.
Noel Pikus-Pace will take the lead. She is looking to make a statement, looking to avenge. And here she comes on the straightaway, near perfect.
Clean at the low point.
This is going to be a huge sigh of relief for Noel Pikus-Pace, a track record
and
for the American.
Almost 0.3 of a second lead after the first run on this track.
She destroys the track record by 1100s.
I think she's happy.
The proverbial monkey off the back after the disqualification. Everyone knew she looked good last week.
Yeah,
that wasn't the issue.
Yeah, she was disqualified from first place, so you know everyone saw how well she's sliding last week, and clearly she mentally got past it Be interesting to see the second run.
Well,
Could go even faster. She's going to be really relaxed then.
She's taking this weighing very seriously. She's not counting any chickens yet. Let's listen in.
Thank you.
One more.
Oh, my heart is just like.
Those two.
Well, we've said it before earlier in the telecast that we have never seen anyone start last in the first run and take over the lead. Noel Pikus-Pace not only does that,
Thanks, everybody.
she does it with a track record. This is an untouchable athlete in run number 2, I would suspect.
You know, anything can happen, but I wouldn't bet against her. See, you're here, great form. She keeps her head low. Her body is so relaxed on the sled, helps absorb all those little bumps right down the middle there. No skid. That was the spot where we saw a lot of the other athletes, even some of the ones in the top 10, skidding in that area on the track.
In a runaway, the American Noel Pikus-Pace with the lead over last week's winner Lizzie Yarnold, Sarah Reed, and Michelle Steele. These are basically the top 6 from a week ago. The rich get richer in the World Cup points, but anything can happen in the second run. 3 Canadians in the top 10. Good day so far for Team Canada. And to look at all of those top 20 as Donna Creighton, just by the seat of her pants, qualifies for run number 2. There will be 21 sleds in the second heat as there's a tie for 20th place. Much, much more to come from Park City, Utah with the second heat of men and women's skeleton.
Thank our sponsors. Viessmann, the Utah Sports Commission, Russian Road Vodka, Gazprom, Adidas, Omega, and the Park City Chamber.
Lincoln,
and a special shout out to BMW.
we are going to turn our attention back to the men here, but in general, this track at Park City, you've been involved here for one of 4 North American tracks for the last couple of years. It's a good sign that they keep bringing in the World Cup races. Some tracks aren't able to do that.
Yeah, it's great because it keeps the public awareness up. You know, we see all those kids alongside the track there. Those are the kids we'd like to have come out and start sliding in a few years when they're a couple of years older. So it's great exposure having these top athletes come into town every year.
Noel Pikus-Pace out in front here as the final sled down in run number 1. She'll be last to go in run number 2. But coming up just in a few moments, it's men's skeleton from Park City, Utah.